Well, hello. Excuse me.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to Tattoos and Toddlers with Jen here. I am Jen with Weirdo Weddings, and I am a wedding photographer and conceptual artist. And I'm also a mom, and I have this podcast for people that run businesses and have kids and also have fun tattoo stories. And so today I have a super very special guest. You might have already heard her voice, but you actually may know her voice. Some of us really do know her voice. Brooke, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that we're doing this. It's been so fun to see your journey going into motherhood after I knew you as a creative and then to see you blend it, which you do seamlessly. It's incredible. Anyway, yeah, so my name is Brooke Shaden and I am a conceptual artist, sort of multidisciplinary. I do photography, some painting, sculpture, writing, motivational speaking, teaching, a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I'm also a foster mother. So I have had 6 kids so far in the past 3.5 years. And that's been my journey so far.
Yeah, and I think that's a number one reason why I wanted to have you on here is because I have already had a very diverse group of people come onto this podcast with different forms of parenting. So I really wanted to bring you on to kind of like talk about some of your experiences of being a parent, almost like an indefinite time frame, like you'd never know how long they're going to be with you and
Yeah.
still running a business. And how have you been able to, does it change with each child that comes into your house? How do you like what's a couple of things that you've been doing, say, as a parenting mindset that you've integrated the business with the parenting aspect, especially with those maybe the first 3 or 4 kids? How did that happen
Yeah.
for you?
Well, it's a really odd experience being a foster parent. So a lot of people who are foster parents are also biological parents where they've had their kids and they're doing this as, I mean, I don't mean to reduce what they're doing, but to say like it's an extra thing that they're doing. And I don't have biological kids, but have always wanted a child of my own. And so for me, it's like I go all in on it. Like this is my kid and like I'm going to treat this kid like they are like everything in the world, like they should be treated anyway. But for me it's just a slightly maybe more heightened like emotional bond that I'm searching for and trying to establish. And so it's hard for me to continue working at all when I have a kid because in my mind I'm like this is my only chance. Like I have to take the chance and like have this kid because I don't know when it's going to end. And that makes it extra difficult to separate from them and say, okay, today I'm going to go to work. Because for me, going to work is going to my office like 2 doors down in the hallway. And I think there's something just more complicated when there isn't somebody over you saying you have to be at work at this time or you're going to lose your job. And so for me, it's a lot of like, well, I just shouldn't work today because what if they leave tomorrow and then I'll regret having done that work. And so it has not been an easy journey for me in figuring that out. The first child that we had, I knew that I was going to want to go all in on it. So I created 6 months of content where I released content almost every day for 6 months that I batch created
Oh my
in the three
gosh.
months before he came. And I found it, what was really interesting was that I had that plan in place where I could be like, I'm just gonna like release this content and whatever. And it was good for keeping my business alive, but it was bad for my mental health of like I create to connect with people, not to just like share stuff without really being there to, have that connection. And so it was very unfulfilling for me. And so what I found was that I created more in the time that my first child was with me than ever before. Like I couldn't stop making stuff. And it was kind of like, I'm gonna do this like no matter what. Like you're just gonna have to come along with me to the forest and like try not to run away while I'm in this dress sitting on a log, like, and that's just how it was. So I'm answering your question in the most roundabout way possible, which is to say that I realize more than ever that my work is also my passion and I can't just put a stop to it to be a parent, but that comes with enormous guilt.
I appreciate that answer because as somebody who was without children for 12 years of my marriage and then making a conscious decision to become a parent, I knew going in, much like you had planned 6 months of content, I knew going in I didn't want to lose myself. And
Yeah.
that meant And I love that you shared about the 6 months of content because you didn't have that connection with yourself or your audience for that amount of time because you went, like you said, you went all in, right?
Yeah.
I find that fascinating because when I had my little kid come along, I was like, well, how do I integrate her into my life? Um, Knowing that I need to create desperately. Like I knew that I would. And as we begin to know ourselves as a person, I feel it also makes us better parents when we are able to get that time for ourselves, but also share time with them, which I
Mhm.
have loved hearing some of the stories of you with the kids and take not only taking them with you, but like encouraging them to make their own art.
Definitely. I mean, like, it was so much fun. We just said goodbye to our 7-year-old, and
Yeah,
it was our first slightly older kid, and that was just, like, what an incredible experience to be able to I didn't even hand him a camera. Like, I can't even say that I had the foresight to be like, "Here's a camera, make something." He just grabbed it out of my hand, and he's, like, running around with this, like, $3,000 piece of equipment, just, like and he's so confident, right? Like, he's like, how do you use the tripod? Like, and like gets it right away, puts it on the tripod. Go stand there, do this. Like he knows exactly what he wants. And I'm like, okay. Like I caught him with my camera once, just laying on the bed. Like he figured out all on his own how to use the 10-second timer. And he's like laying on the bed like this, taking self-portraits. I'm like, how? But it's amazing because I'm just like, this thing that I found such an outlet in, other people can as well, and especially little kids, if they
absolutely.
haven't had the opportunity to express themselves. And certainly with kids in foster care, have not having that outlet or perhaps being not treated so well for speaking about what they've been through and stuff. So it was so much fun to make stuff with him. He was constantly begging me, please, can we go to the studio today? And like just always wanted to make stuff. It was so adorable.
Oh, that's the sweetest thing. And I think I hear little baby cries in the background too.
And that's actually his happy squeal. He's very
Okay,
loud.
that's good because I was like, I would feel terribly guilty. Now, let's talk about guilt for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of mom guilt,
Yeah.
parent guilt, whatever you want to call it. And I love that. I don't know if you've explored this yet or not in your art. I know you're experiencing a lot of dealing with grief and many things like that. But have you ever explored the concept of guilt yet, like in a photography form or art form or writing form?
Yeah, I have, and, not photography, but in my writing a lot, and I think
Yeah.
I needed that to try to understand what I was feeling because it was
Hmm.
very complicated. And in fact, my first form of guilt did not come in the typical mom guilt way where we're kind of like, "Well, I can't leave you," or "I can't do this because then I'm not spending time with you." It
Yeah.
was more just like I became a mom to this 2-year-old who I didn't really like at first. Like, I was like, "Oh gosh," like, I thought that I was just gonna be in love with him and like, "Oh, I love you so much," and no, I was like, "This kid is violent and he keeps yelling at me, and, like, now my nose is bleeding because he hit me with a fire truck." I was just like, "I don't know about this," you know? And I felt so guilty for months and months being like, I don't like, I thought I knew what love was, and I just realized
Mm,
I didn't know anymore, and, like, I knew certain forms of it, but not this, and I had to really reconcile with this perhaps slightly controversial statement, which is that I don't really know if it matters if you love someone or if you just pretend to love them. You know what I mean?
mm,
Because your actions are the same. What you give them is the same. And so I had to, in my mind, like pretend love him for months until I really did. And I just didn't expect that. So the first form of guilt was just in this I don't know if I love you or how to love you kind of thing. And then after I got over that, which took a long time to get over. I mean, it took
mhm.
even though I knew that I did love him at a certain point, like very genuinely, it
Yeah.
still took years for me to reconcile how I felt in those first few months. And but then after that, then the normal mom guilt came, which was just like, how do I walk away from you when like you're being cute and I should be playing with you to go do this thing that I just want to do? And I think that that gets exacerbated when you have had some success, you've got money in the savings account, you don't have to go do that thing right that second because it could wait, and then you do put it off, and then for how long, it's and that's where I'm right now, where we've been doing this for 3.5 years,
Mhm.
and we've had breaks in between, like we've had like in total a years worth of breaks. But in those breaks, then you're grieving, you're anticipating the next child. It's not just like, I'm free, let's just do stuff, like there's a whole process. So I'm feeling that fatigue now of like, I don't know if I've been very productive with the kids, but not in the ways like I look at my career and I feel like it's stalled in a lot of ways, and it
Mm,
makes me unhappy. And then it becomes now the third tier of guilt, which is like, I don't have to keep parenting. Like I can just say no anytime I want.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
when do you stop, even though I don't have to work at all? I mean, I do, obviously. I'm not like,
Yeah.
rolling in it. I have to
Yeah.
work, but like, but not on anyone's timeline. So it's tough.
Mm. Yes, that's a lot to take in because, I really appreciate the insight from your perspectives. And I think that's a really big reason why I wanted to have you on for this conversation. Because there's probably a lot of people in your same situation, and they don't choose to express through art. And I think it's just kind of an awesome blessing that we get to have to see from your perspective in the art world, because I enjoy the visual aspect of emotion and things that we're processing. And I also enjoy conversation. Apparently, I'm kind of like opening up into this whole world of conversation where I'm doing things I haven't done before. I'm
Yeah.
speaking about things I haven't spoken before, and just going a little bit deeper on how my experience also has been with parenting, and knowing that whenever I walk away for 3 days to go to a con, I know exactly how I'm going to feel after the con. So I feel like and I told my friend this weekend, I said, for the betterment of our whole family unit, it is good for me to have at least 24 hours of decompression time.
Yeah, and I feel that, like, I
Yeah.
realized right away, like, when I became a parent, it was 3 months before the pandemic started, and then we were
Mhm.
just, like, stuck, at home all the time,
Yeah.
um, and I knew right off the bat, like, I am not meant to be a stay-at-home mom. That is not what I have been called to do here at all.
Yes, I
And
agree
I
with
need
that.
breaks. But the tough part is that when you don't know when the kid's going to leave,
Yeah.
it's hard to take those breaks. It's really hard. And then to know, well, after they leave, I'll have all the time I want, So it's very challenging for me. And so I found myself like this year, I had to go on 2 work trips while we had our 6th foster son, and I was like on red eyes, like, doing my thing for 24 hours wherever I had to be, and like right back flying overnight and stuff. And I was just exhausted, but it's like that panic of like, they could literally come and pick him up while I'm gone on this trip and I would not even
Yeah.
be able to say goodbye. And so that panic is just like so exhausting, to work through that and to
Yeah.
and around that.
It's almost like you're like looking over your shoulder. You don't really have that moment of relaxation when you've taken on
Yeah.
this part of parenting in the foster system. Yeah,
Yeah.
I cannot relate to that, but I understand the panic of my child sleeping and wondering if she's breathing and checking on. I still obsessively check on her in the cameras. I mean, they're it feels so fragile in these younger years, and there's things that can happen, and I try not to live in that anxiety of anything can happen at any time, but it's like, the more I jump into living life, knowing that all of this is going to happen anyway, no matter what, I can't control everything. And I'm like, well, as a parent, I know I can't control everything, but I control some things.
Yeah.
Um, and I do get to have, we get to compartmentalize our time that we get to spend with them. And especially you, I love and appreciate that you're like, I've got to run home to be with my kid.
Yeah.
Because I just love that. But your sense of urgency is different than, somebody like me who knows my kid's not going anywhere currently. Or,
Yeah.
but at the same token, like I'm just like very peaceful about where we're at right now, and how I try to divide the time between family and fun and all. You know what? I don't know how to have fun some days. I don't know how to turn the work hat off. And if I
Yeah.
haven't turned the work hat off, then I'm not turning off the momming hat. So I'm either thinking about her or work. And I was like, well, at some point I just need to stop everything and just thinking about fun. So
Yes.
I'm working
I
on
know.
that.
Seriously, it's like such an undervalued trait to have, this sense of play in our lives, whether it's in parenting or work or anything. I mean, it's just, and I've really tried to remember that with all of our kids, which is like, I'm taking in kids who have had really terrible, difficult lives so
Yeah.
far. And so my goal every day is to just like at least have a moment where there's just like pure bliss of like this sense of play where just like I can say yes to anything and like nothing else matters. And I don't always succeed, like there are definitely days where I'm just like, I'm mad all day and like I can't do this, stuff like that. But I try really hard to remember that like one of the most important things that these kids need is just someone to say, yeah, you can have fun and like that's okay.
Yeah, and I really really love that because those, like I said, those early years, it's just they I want to say that they deserve to have a childhood. They deserve to
Mhm.
have a little bit of fun and peace in their lives, wherever they can get it. And I think also, you have written so many different things about, remembering them and will they remember you,
Yeah.
and I can just speak from my own personal experience as a child. There's so many things I remember feeling from my childhood that
Yeah.
you carry with you. And so my hopes is that every child that you've touched, they'll feel that they took a little piece of you with them.
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah.
It's one of those things where when you say goodbye to a kid, you have to let go of any expectation
Yep.
from there on out. And
Yep.
I think that's why I'm so all in during the experience because it's like you don't have any control over what they remember or
Yep.
if they remember you or anything. And so all you can do is just like give them 1,000% every day and hope that that feeling of like somebody really cared about me and really tried hard sticks with them in some capacity. And so, and I feel good about that. Like after our first, I remember thinking I was just in despair of like I didn't do good enough for him. Like I just felt certain that
Yeah.
like I failed him. And
Yeah.
now looking back on it, I feel the opposite. Now I'm like, no, he knows that I tried every day, like as hard as I could, and
Oh.
maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but I feel good that if he remembers anything, I think it's the good.
I love that. And I think any connection or relationship that we're in, even if it's a temporary one, we do connect with each other's energies. And so I really hope that I just know that. I just know it's one of those wonderful things that we can have with each other as humans. And so it's just fabulous. So what I kind of wanted to morph into as well is if there's any of your personal tattoos that kind of tie into, well, obviously you have a lifelong journey, but is there anything in specifically that may also tie into this parenting journey that you're on that is kind of relevant to our
Yeah.
talk?
Well, I have
Yeah.
2. I have 2.
Yeah. I
And
know.
one of them, I think one of them will surprise you actually. Okay.
Ooh.
So I'll share that one first. Okay.
Yay.
So I have my wedding ring tattooed on my finger. And 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 this isn't something that I really talk about very much, but I think it's really relevant, which is that I wanted not a biological child, but I always wanted to adopt a child. And my husband did not ever want to have a kid under like in any capacity. And so, and that's what led us to fostering was this sort of compromise of like, let's do it temporarily and we'll get to help a lot of kids and like that'll be great and then it's not forever and so we get to sort of go back to the life that we love and have lived and all of that. And so and I bring this up because I we decided to get these tattooed right before our first kid came and it was kind of like this affirmation for us of just like the journey that we went on together and that we're on and that we're committing to, which is like I honor and respect your desire to not want kids and he honors and respects my desire to have kids and like he's always saying, we'll foster as long as you want, however many kids you want, and I think that's like I find that that's really a rare attribute in partners, this sort of like ability to compromise to that degree. And I've had, people say unkind things about this decision that we've made at times.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the knee-jerk reaction is like, get divorced, like go have a kid, and I'm like, I don't know. There's really something to be said for commitment and like and honoring the love that you do have in your life and stuff and doing things a different way. And I'm really grateful that we found this path because I feel like not everybody can foster, that it's a difficult thing to
Absolutely.
do.
Yep.
And I've always felt like I could. Like I never had that reaction of like I can't do that or I could never do that. And so I'm grateful that like through this weird off the beaten path journey we've been on that we've can't come to this place. So that's one. And then my other one it says I contain multitudes and I think that one's pretty darn relevant because who doesn't? You know, and I got that as a reminder for myself, that it's okay to not be who I was yesterday, and it's okay to embrace who I might become tomorrow. And I got that one also right before we started fostering, and it never proved more true than during that. I mean, so far in this whole journey, just I feel like every kid is different, every grieving period is different. Like I feel like I'm evolving so quickly. And I think you do, like when you have 6 kids in 3.5 years and they're just coming and going, and it's
Yeah.
this constant roller coaster. Every high feels different and every low feels different for
Hmm.
different reasons. And I think at the beginning of that journey, it was really hard to accept my new self because I felt like it wasn't good enough. And now I'm at a place where I can look back at, hindsight's amazing, isn't it? And just to say, like, that version was also really good and like pretty cool. And I like her. And I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that tomorrow is going to be pretty good
I love that
too.
because the perception of ourselves and the perceptions of what we're going through, it does change. And you could potentially have clarity over the things in your life the longer that time goes on, and the longer you take the time to look at where you've been and where you are and where you might go. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
speaking of tattoos, I might as well share the newest one for mine too, because I haven't shared that story, and it's the best place is here with you because I was able to start talking to you about it at New York City, but I was like, yeah, it's an art show. We have so much going on. But my newest tattoo, I'm not going to bother to try and show it, but it starts with an eyeball. It basically starts with an eyeball that represents vision, and I think vision really was a representation of our family unit, you know. So I have 3 catch lights in the eye that's representative of my little family, Mizak and Miracle. And then I also have 3 eyelashes, which is a representation of my babies that didn't make it. They didn't get to
Mhm.
live here on the planet. Um, and then I also have a teardrop that is coming out of the eye. That is a representation of all the tears and the water washing everything from the grief and from everything that I went through to emotionally get here. But also inside the teardrop is an inverted teardrop that I feel
Oh,
like the tears going down are also going up at the same time. They have meaning. They are not worthless and wasted.
yeah.
And so it's quite a beautiful thing to look at. And then I'm planted in a pot that is broken because I am broken, but I'm
Mhm.
not shattered.
Yeah.
So I'm held together by this beautiful glue. And but my pot is broken, but at the very, very bottom, you can see roots coming out of the pot because I feel like I am very rooted now more than ever in who I am and what our family looks like and what I want to do, in this moment. It could
Yeah.
change tomorrow, right? But in this moment, I am rooted. But I also get this sense of feeling when I think of the Little Shop of Horrors, when the plant could bust out of his plant base and then walk. So
Yeah.
I feel like these roots also make me mobile. So if that makes sense, I'm rooted, but I'm also mobile.
That's so beautiful. The first thing that I thought of when I saw it was that you can't be contained.
Oh
Like,
God,
you don't need
yes.
this base to
Yeah,
hold you
I
together.
don't need this whole thing to hold me together. And there's
Yeah.
leaves coming out of it that to leaves to me is like growth and anything that's been planted in my life has come to either be a plant or some kind of a flower or a leaf and pruning off the
It's
ones that
so
don't work.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, it's super fun, and that's why I love getting tattoos. And there's another thing too. This is my most visible tattoo. Most people don't know I have probably like 8, but
Yeah.
nobody's ever seen them because I've always hidden them. And or if I've hidden them, it's not always been on purpose, but they're always on the back side. So this is my most visible, and I almost cried when I got it because I knew that I would have to talk about it one day. So
Yeah.
so you're welcome. You get to hear the full story today.
I love hearing that story. It's so beautiful. And I actually made the opposite choice. Like, all of my tattoos are completely visible on me because
Yeah,
not because I wanted to talk about them with people, but I got them as reminders for myself where I just have to look down and they're all right there, and I never can't see them, you
I
know?
know. And
And
yeah.
yeah, it's very powerful to do that, like to acknowledge what
Mhm.
you've decided was important enough to stamp on yourself every single day. It's really a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is, and you're right, like, having it visible to a reminder. of our stories or our
Yeah.
thoughts or our, I know your other one is the mind killer, fear is the mind killer.
Yep.
But it's like, there's something I can just look down now and say, oh yeah, hey,
Yeah.
this is a reminder of the story that, and I got to tell you, Brooke, I was dreaming this up as I was driving to the tattoo parlor. Like I had pieces and puzzle pieces over, 3 or 4 months that I
Oh
just
my
kept getting. I
gosh.
put it all together, but then I was drawing it in between stoplights all the way to the tattoo parlor. And then I got there and I haggled with the artist. And then we finally had this final picture. And I think
That's
that's what was
amazing.
wonderful. Yeah, that was wonderful. It's talk about a creative process when you're working with somebody. If you haven't drawn your own tattoo, then you're working with another artist. So as we are about out of time here, I wanted to see if there's anything we want to leave anybody with today regarding that wonderful, wonderful roller coaster of running your own business and also having small children, grown children, foster children. You know, is there
Yeah.
anything else we want to leave with them today as we close out our talk?
Yeah, well, I think what my journey through motherhood has taught me is that everything is impermanent.
Mhm.
And that might mean something different to everybody, who hears that. But for me, it was this realization that my business will change, my kids will change, my kids will leave, my business will probably be done one day and I'll have to do something else. And I went into that realization with fear and trepidation. Like, I don't want to lose these kids. I don't want my business to change. Like, all those ways that we as humans hold on to everything so tightly because that's just human nature to hold on. And I've come out the other side, I feel, with this real sense of freedom that now I can say, yes, everything changes and that's beautiful and that's great. And let's just embrace whatever's going to come next while honoring that there will be grief and we can miss something while we can accept something new. And I think that is such a beautiful way to parent and to have a business is just to kind of keep in your mind at the forefront that this is temporary and that's okay and that makes it beautiful.
Oh, you couldn't have said it any better, and I totally agree with that. I feel like I need to get another tattoo to remind me of that.
Yeah.
No, that's just a beautiful way to look at life and live life because if we hold on to everything, we can accept nothing. Like it's like you've hold.
Yes.
My husband plays video games way too many times, and he has so much in his little backpack that he always has to dump stuff off because he always carries too much. I think it's the same with us.
Yes.
We got to
I
let
love
some
that
stuff go.
analogy.
Yeah, we got to let some stuff go to take on some new things. And then eventually you may have to let some of that go too. So thank you for a beautiful conversation today over
Thank
our
you, Jen.
wonderful stories. Thank you for coming
Oh,
in.
you're just my favorite. I'm so glad that we got to do this.
I know, me too. Thank you for working in the time with me. I know that it's we both live pretty busy lives, but I'm so excited.
Well, you know what? You live a spontaneous life and I live a very regimented life. So
Oh, I was going to
I'm
mention that because
constantly
I thought
like, Jen, put it on the calendar weeks in advance.
I'm like telling her, like, hey, do you got an hour today?
And I'm like, what? Like my brain breaks every time you ask me something like that. I'm like,
I love
today.
it.
It's already
Yes.
today.
Yes, I love it because that's how I've actually started marketing this as an organic podcast because I really feel like sometimes it's just
That's
organically done.
wonderful. I
I
I
don't
need to channel you. I'm gonna like make a little pact for myself. I'm gonna try to do more spontaneous things in my days. Maybe not podcast, but something.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like this is just it's a no-brainer. It's just a nice, wonderful conversation. And obviously we've known each other for a while, so we're
Yes,
comfy with that. But I do love the fact that I
very.
got you on the calendar and that way and I just love you that you admit that to yourself and admit that to everybody else is like you need
Totally.
something on the calendar versus like I can't
It's
do that in an hour. You won't even be home.
I don't function in spontaneity, really.
All right. Well, thank you so much again for coming on and I'm going to sign out. Y'all stay tuned for the next episode and we'll see you soon.